Welcome to Breach Please, the cybersecurity show for people who are tired of being sold a firewall and a feeling. I'm Jess Hebenstreit, and with me as always is Jake Williams. Between the two of us, we've broken into networks, defended them, and shown up at 3 a.m. to clean up the messes that everybody else has hot takes on about online. So when we tell you something's nonsense, you can take it to the bank. Here's the deal. Every episode, we take the security stories that actually matter, we translate them out of vendor speak and into English, and we say things your CISO wishes they could say out loud but can't because they have a mortgage. No fear-mongering, no vendor scripts, and absolutely no synergizing our threat posture. If you hear that phrase on this show, it's a duress signal. Breach, please. Pull up a chair. So, Jake, I think we wanted to start off this episode with a minor correction from a previous episode.
Minor correction. Yeah, in an earlier episode, we're talking about ServiceNow and one of the vulnerabilities and had to do with some of their AI stuff, or at least theorized to have to do with a lot of their AI stuff. And I said Agentforce with ServiceNow. And I got to tell you, obviously Agentforce is Salesforce, not ServiceNow. But I confuse the two, I think, for, a pretty reasonable reason, right? I've never, renewed a license with either, right? Over a multi-year period and have it be the same SKU. And so hence the whole pushing something on me, right? Especially new AI features that I didn't want yet somehow have to pay for now. It was I hope an understandable mistake, but I'll make sure to separate Salesforce and ServiceNow in my mind. Anyway, going forward, what are we doing today?
Yeah, so more has come out on this OpenAI escaping its bounds and hacking Hugging Face. And so I think we should talk about that a little bit more. Reuters, I almost said Reuters. Reuters came out with an article that actually has a more complete timeline than what we saw previously, late last week, early last week, sometime. And so I think it's good for us to talk about that. You wanna kick it off?
Yeah, I mean, let's chat about that, right? Because one of the things that I was pretty livid about or animated about, let's say, I am livid about it, but pretty animated about a previous chat, really came down to the timeline. What was the timeline, right? OpenAI didn't really talk about what happened between the 16th when Hugging Face put their notification out and the 21st when OpenAI did theirs. And now more has emerged about the timeline, and I guess just to get some reporting on the record for those that haven't seen it, ultimately there's they believe that there's two intrusions at Hugging Face intrusions at Hugging Face that started maybe on July 9th, but definitely July 11th through the 13th, and so that's legitimately right out from Reuters. Excuse me, let me back up here and say that OpenAI believes that one of their agents tried to escape its sandbox, its testing environment, on July 9th. Hugging Face attacks happened on July 11th through the 13th. And then OpenAI, as it turns out, didn't actually self-identify the fact that their agent had left. What do you think about that?
So I'm appalled, quite frankly, especially because in this Reuters article, it noted that their models had been doing this previously. Their agents have been doing this previously, and its agents was making notes to itself and other agents about how to escape the environment.
Right. Yes.
And and they knew about this, and then no one's watching it. That's like logging security events and not looking at them. And then you're like, oh, I got breached. Well, no kidding, man.
Right.
What is happening here? And how your whole business model is AI being leading edge, all of these things. You have documented evidence that this is being attempted by your agents, and you're not actively monitoring this? And then it said, oh, well, we have so many events we can't possibly. Welcome to security. You have to prioritize. what are they doing? I am appalled.
Yep. Do you remember, when we were talking about this, and this may have been offline, it may have been on the show, I can't remember, but I said, it's difficult for me to take OpenAI seriously as an enterprise company.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
definitely
and they want to
somebody who's,
IPO at the end of the year. Come on.
well, I mean, at $1 trillion plus valuation, right? But literally, like they were talking about the fact that they're not looking at the logs, right? They didn't independently identify. I shouldn't say not looking at the logs. They said, I believe, that the agent testing environment was separately monitored from like the enterprise customer streams. Well,
Monitor's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
I know, right? Because, because look, I mean, and so I think it's really easy for folks to step back and say, oh, well, they were definitely monitoring, for intrusions on the enterprise side, but that's a test lab. Don't worry. Well, I am worried, right? Because again, just for a number of reasons. First off, the agent leaving itself notes, right? Like this is the plot line from so much science fiction.
Yeah.
It also is, it literally, this, anybody who's read the academic literature, and I recognize that's not a lot of our audience here, and that's okay. But anybody who's read the academic literature knows that this is a pattern of abuse. OpenAI certainly knows this is a pattern of abuse, right? And they're not monitoring for that. But take that off the table for a second. I do want to come back to that because that's a really special kind of logging to look at. But they aren't even looking at the security logging, right? So they even here, OpenAI is trying to conflate the story into, oh, well, but that's not our enterprise side, right? Well, it's like, well, hold on a second, right? You didn't notice, even at a net flow level, right, that your agent had escaped the sandbox. And I guess I want to kick it back to you and talk about, like, I know for a fact, because where we met and everything, I know you've had the opportunity to, or gosh, the requirement, maybe not an opportunity, right, to set up monitoring in lab with pleasure. Right? I wasn't going to call it a pleasure because I think it's anything but.
Yes.
Right. But having to monitor laboratory environments, right? Lab environments where, and I'm not just talking medical labs, I'm talking about labs where
Research
people are experimenting, right? Right. How, what do you take, what's your take on this, I guess, right? From a monitoring perspective.
I think you have to me, it seems like it just was not even really considered. And in those kinds of specialized environments, those have to be a priority because of what could have and did happen. Right? And so we all have too many logs, too many events, those kinds of things. And we have to put in rules for how we monitor, how we prioritize, how we respond to things. And I gotta say, this should have been prioritized higher. And if it wasn't coming in at a high enough alert level for it to get eyes on it, then you need to modify your rule set so that it's coming in at that critical and you're getting eyes on it in a very timely manner. I mean, the timeline on this is just unacceptable. And if it hadn't hit Hugging Face, how long? It would probably still be going, right?
Right.
Thankfully, Hugging Face detected it and it kicked off a series of events. The FBI was notified, all of these kinds of things, but it shouldn't have taken that.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. I have a couple of high level, line items, and then maybe we'll kind of move into a little bit more nuance around liability and risk and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like the agent leaving itself notes for future versions of itself, right? That's just context, right? It's saving context so that the next session, because for those that aren't aware, with an LLM, right, you chatting with Claude 4.8 or whatever, Opus 4.8, every time you reset that session, right, the LLM loses memory. It doesn't have. Now, I should note here, there are some tools like Claude Cowork, right, even ChatGPT on the website is bringing in some history and context, like what it knows about you or what is inferred about you. So be aware, but that's basically the same thing that's happening here, right? Yeah. Claude Cowork, for instance, going in and remembering that I'm a malware expert, right, or work in incident response or what have you, even though I bring it up in that conversation, that session, that's itself leaving notes for itself later, not for a sandbox. So this behavior is totally expected, right? So I wanted to call that out there to make sure everybody's aware of, like, the fact that it left itself a note in and of itself isn't the kind of thing that we're going to lose any sleep over. But right, the fact that we're seeing here, that again, they just, the note part doesn't bother me. The fact that they couldn't see it escape the sandbox, and now we're kind of, I guess, I hate to say obfuscating the facts around it, but I'm not sure that I have another explanation for what that blog post on the 21st is. And I guess, Jessica, having looked at the blog post and now looked at the Reuters article, I know you've done a lot of incidents. I know we've both had to do public relations work and massage we're not doing the PR work, right? But help the PR team massage the message
so that it's still accurate and truthful without watering it down too much.
So where do you land here?
I think there is. I need to be careful here.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
I think I don't want to use the word intentional, but they're
Can I jump in here real quick? So
yes.
We intentionally all the time in incident response paint, with the public relations side, paint the rosiest possible picture given the fact pattern identified. So I don't have any problem saying intentional in that context, that they're painting the rosiest possible picture for themselves. I just didn't
want it to be taken as intentional with malicious intent, because that is not what I'm saying.
Okay.
And so
well, define malicious here too, right? I mean, if malicious is
with the intent to deceive, right? I think I'm trying to be very careful, friend. I don't want to sued 4 episodes in.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think that the messaging was sufficiently watered down so as to lose important context and information.
Okay, fair. So without speaking about OpenAI, let me tell you that I've been in multiple incident response situations in which we have crafted a message. I may have ethical issues with this, right? But at the end of the day, right, I'm there to do the incident response, not the PR. But I have worked multiple incidents, and I know for a fact you have as well, where there have been, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth, this is just me, but I've worked multiple incidents where there have messages crafted that are in fact intentionally misleading. And they are intentionally, again, none of it's lying, unless you count lying through omission, which, some regulatory bodies do. Come back to that in a second too. I will say this is a spot where I kind of wish OpenAI had already IPO'd, right? Because
and this is actually filings and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I talk about this a lot with folks in incident response, with specifically third-party and vendor relationships, right? When you have a publicly traded company, and folks, this is a good kind of heuristic, what have you. But when you have a publicly traded company and they say something publicly, you can take it to the bank that they believe all of those facts to be true.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Right?
Yes,
and that they are not lying through omission because right now, of course, interesting regulatory environment we live in today, right? But you can just about bet that there will be retroactive enforcement in some cases. And anyway, but a non-publicly traded company, right? There's not an immediate cause of action when they lie, right? Like, I mean, sure, you'd be like, I materially relied on this information and you lied and I'm going to try to sue you and good luck, right? And with a publicly traded company, whole different ballgame. Yeah.
So speaking of their IPO and not being publicly traded yet, I mean, they've stated, there's, people speculating out there that they want to IPO by the end of the year. Do you think this impacts their ability to do that, or the share price at which they debut?
I mean, I think they would have already IPO'd if they could get the valuation that they were going for, which and now forgive me, I'm trying to remember what Ed Zitron said. I want to say he said they were targeting 1 point. He'd seen a Ed gets all kinds of back channel stuff. Like, yeah, I think I want to say it was like 1.2 or 1.3 trillion dollars, and like they just, yeah. Well, they, and again, forgive me. Ed Zitron's amazing. Follow him. Listen to his stuff. But I want to say that he's accounted for something like 800 million in investment. It could be closer to 9, something like that. Like, the bottom line is they have to IPO at $1 trillion plus, or they're
doesn't make
or yeah, or literally their investors could have done better, like in treasury bonds, right, kind of thing. And that's not how you want to IPO. Like, that is a stock
not a winning,
yeah,
winning formula.
it is. This is not fantastic. Yeah, that puts you on track to be another pets.com, right, kind of thing. And
that's a throwback. The sock puppets,
yeah. Oh, they were fantastic until they weren't, right?
Until they weren't,
and literally lit a bunch of investor money on fire. Yeah, but you got a great point there, right? So IPO, I don't think they can IPO for their, for what they want anyway. But sure, let's put that out. Take that out for a second. Do I think this really impacts the value of their IPO? I think it depends on what happens next, because I wanted to pitch this to you as well. What do you think about regulation? Is this a spot where there should be a bigger call for regulation? If so, yes. If no, why?
Yes.
Okay.
I as much as we want to think that companies will do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, that is not the case. We have seen this over the course of history. I mean, there had to be regulations put in place so that, the dairy industry wouldn't put chalk in the milk when it was going bad. We had to say you're not allowed to have, poison in the food supply, all those kinds of things. Regulations are there for a reason. And I think we've seen multiple examples in the AI space now where regulation is needed, because they're not going to regulate themselves.
Right.
And it's really funny. So I was at the RSA conference 2 years ago, I think it was. And, I volunteer there sometimes. I do the room host thing. And I happened to be in a panel, and there was someone from OpenAI there arguing that they don't need to be regulated. It would be bad for innovation. All the typical arguments for why regulation, is bad. And, I say that's in bad faith. But I think, we've had multiple instances now of examples, and not just from OpenAI, where regulation is needed. But I think you and I are in a similar chat, maybe on Slack, where this topic came up, and someone made a joke that Anthropic was like, "Oh no, this model's too dangerous. You all can't possibly have it." And OpenAI's like, "Hold my beer. My model's too dangerous for even me," right? Because
yeah. Yep.
Where do you land on regulation?
Ooh, see, I'm an anti-regulation guy through and through.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I don't want regulation, but I think I probably land, generally I don't want regulation. I think I land probably in give or take the same place you are here. I genuinely view that regulation is here specifically. Regulation should only be used when market incentives aren't protecting the public, right? And so chalk and spoiled milk, for instance, right, or milk that's going bad, that is actively not protecting the public, and so. So I guess, that's where I land is this, for me, makes it so clear that we have real issues with the AI labs being able to police themselves. Yeah. Regulation is needed.
Yeah.
And so I'm not happy about that. It makes me sad to say it, but regulation's absolutely needed here. I think about the public outcry, right? I mean, imagine for a minute if this was MIT or Harvard or
God, can you imagine?
University. I can't, right? And now I want you to expand out just a little bit, right? And I want you to think for a minute. Suppose it's not MIT or Harvard. suppose it's Shenzhen University or Shanghai University or what have you, right? And something breaks containment, would you believe that it was not intentional? Like, I don't think we can
Absolutely
paint
not.
course, right?
Right.
And I don't think we can paint that narrative, right? And look, the reality is that, again, there's just so much academic literature out there about reward hacking. These AI labs who should know it better than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
They have tons of PhDs there in this space, and they're not either they're not being consulted, or they are being consulted and not being listened to, or
Gee, what
they're
does that feel like?
yeah. I think everybody watching here can relate to
Relate to that. That
yes.
sounds familiar.
What does that feel like? Huh. Every day is what it
Yeah.
feels like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's something to that, right? Where again, they've got the expertise. They can't say they didn't know. And I just, again, I absolutely, because of this incident alone, like, I up to this point, I would have said I wasn't worried about the big labs, right? I was worried about the mom and pop. Like, there's one AI lab that I follow, like, where they're like, yeah, we've got a MacBook Pro, with 128 gig MacBook Pro, and they're like, and we've got a few video cards, and they don't even specify models, right? Like, that's the kind of AI lab, like, that's doing some obliteration on models and what have you. That's the kind that I expect to have an issue like this, right? That would trigger. In which case, I could see OpenAI and Anthropic jumping back and going, wait, that's not us. Look at how responsible we are. That cat's out of the bag, man. Like, that's gone. That argument, I say that cat's out of the bag. The argument's gone, right? Like, it's, yeah. So I think we do need regulation, and so now if we've crossed the Rubicon of we probably need regulation, can I put you on the spot and ask, what would you do?
Oh my God, I was going to ask you first.
Okay, I mean, but go. I've been speaking a bunch.
Let's see. Well, I definitely think there needs to be fines and penalties of such an amount that it's not a so-called poor tax, right? Like it has to be substantive enough to really make them want to do the right thing, right? It needs to impact the bottom line. It can't just be like, oh, it's $1 million. Like, well, okay, that's a rounding error for
Right.
these companies, right?
Yep.
It has to be per incident. I think that they need to be audited regularly against a certain set of standards, need some attestations. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I think that there needs to be big money involved for failing to adhere to any regulation.
I concur 100%. I have not fully figured all this out, because, like, this is a much larger policy discussion. By the way, if you, folks in cyber here, if you ever get a chance to give back with governments or NGOs who are helping to write policy, go do it. Right? One, a lot of our leaders are very clueless about how technology works, and like wanting kill switches for open weight models, right? Which is just not how the internet works, right? But so go help them. You also learn a lot about how hard it is to write policy, because what sounds really simple, you have to remember, when it becomes literally the law of the land, edge cases matter, and enumerating those edge cases, you have to get that right, or you actually are killing innovation. You actually are causing harm to existing companies and people, right, that funded them and all that. But on the regulation side, immediately cause of action, right? So just it's not questionable. If your agent, I don't care if you took best practices or not. I think immediately, I'm not interested in any safe harbor here at all. Period. If you have an agent, right, that broke containment somehow, and again, I'm not interested in the how. I mean, I am very interested, but for this purpose, I'm not interested. You broke containment, like 100% of the cost of that for responding to that is on you. And there's there becomes a, so that we're not nitpicking through the line item costs. There's a presumption of, it's the EU product liability directive, right? It's model genuinely after that, right? There's a presumption that you in fact are guilty effectively. Right? I mean, once it's shown that it's your agent, right? You're not going to fight and nitpick over cost. The presumption goes to that cost is real until you prove it's not make the other party prove it's real. One of the other things EUPLD, the product liability directive, does very well that needs to be modeled here is that, you know, it removes that whole what's a black box, right? You couldn't possibly know how it worked issue. And so, yeah, I saw the eye roll there, right? But that's the kind of thing that needs to happen here too, right? You don't have to explain how their agent did it. You just have to say, hey, this came from this organization, go, right? And now there are going to be some organizations that'll say, well, that was my IP space, but I was hacked and somebody redirected through. Cool, prove that, right? But the presumption is it came from you, it came from an AI agent, and I'm ready to not only say immediately, like again, there's an immediate cause of action, there's a presumption of guilt, there's a like all of that. Throw the risk down. This is very similar, by the way, to me with agentic identities, right? Where when somebody asks for one in an organization, I'm like, cool. Who is going to be accountable for this? Right? Accountable for the actions of this agent. What's the name? And people try to give me a department all the time. And I'm like, nope, I'm not interested in a department. I didn't ask you for a department. I asked you who by name will be accountable for this agent's actions.
Like we have with SOX, right? SOX regulation.
For goodness sakes, right? Yes. Our friends at Enron, thankfully, well, not thankfully, but due to our friends at Enron, right, we now have SOX, right? Yeah. And so I think, very, very, very similar. I think we need something like that. And I'm interested in penalties for that as well, in two ways, right? So not only are you paying costs, right, but like nobody ever, the direct cost of incident response is one thing. There's a large indirect cost with business interruption that goes into it.
Oh, yeah. So lost revenue, downtime,
bingo. Right. Yep.
Replacing hardware, potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Hotels and food and
just the distraction time alone causes 100%. Business interruption, right?
Other projects that didn't get done because you're spending hours, on incident response. Absolutely. Right.
And I don't want to have to quantify those, right? So there I want, like, again, just some multiple 4x, 5x, 10x, right? Nothing like 1,000x that's going to like put an AI lab out of, and this doesn't have to be an AI lab, by the way, right? If Malware Jake LLC deploys an agent and it goes and hacks, pick company X, whatever, right? Hacks X, actually, there we go. Then I expect to be sued, and to the extent I expect them to drain my insurance at a bare minimum, and so I think that's what has to happen there. And then separately, I want that multiple damages, whatever that is. I also want that to go and be donated into some type of AI safety research institute type thing, whether it is the AI Safety Institute or some other NGO that's doing work to figure out how to not have this continue. And would publish best practices, right?
Yeah.
There's way more that's needed, but that's a bare minimum. What I can't get on the bus with is our agents are AI, and again, AI doesn't have any power until you hook it up to stuff, so our agents, right? Our agents are so powerful, they're so dangerous, they're ... Okay, right? Well, like, tell me what you're doing to protect them, because... Right? Tell me what you're doing to harness them, because I don't see it. I just don't see it. So, yeah.
So let me ask you one more question before we close out this topic. Do you believe Hugging Face was the only one impacted by this?
Not a bit. I was born at night. It wasn't last night, right? So, so I fully expect this is another reason that I truly wish at this point OpenAI were public, because I do absolutely. The odds against Hugging Face being you have an agent that broke containment. The odds that Hugging Face was the only target hacked. I mean, first off, the idea that you couldn't go find somewhere else, right? The exploit gym. The exploit gym, results, right, is just ridiculous, right? They're out there, for goodness sakes. It didn't need to hack Hugging Face to get them.
Right.
So now I'm down to what specifically, like the model did not, I've done enough of this work, right, with goal hijacking and reward hacking, right, goal manipulation and reward hacking, what have you. Like, I teach people how to do it. I teach people how to detect it, right? I've done enough work with it. You cannot convince me.
I'm sorry, Jake. It's undetectable. There's no way this could have happened. You don't teach me about that.
Baloney, right? By the way, I'm teaching out Wild West Hacking Fest with Anti-Siphon, right, in October. I've got a 1 day class even coming up here in late August, middle August, something. We'll put I'll put links in the show notes or something. But look, you can't convince me that the Exploit Gym story is real. There's something else there, right? And by the way, too, whatever that other thing is, now I've got to double down and say, no, I don't believe Hugging Face was likely the only ones impacted. They're the ones that detected it.
Yep, and went public.
Sure, and yes, and went public. Fair enough, right? So fair enough. Do we want to flip over here? I know we're running a little bit long, but do we want to flip over and talk about that Claude, the Claude 5?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Picking on OpenAI, let's pick on Anthropic.
Yeah. So Anthropic releases Claude 5. Claude 5 here, I believe, was it Friday or? Yeah, it was Friday, I think.
Yeah. I was working. It's like, hey, go use this new model. I was like, no, thanks. I'm good with my Sonnet.
Yeah, right. What kills me too, by the way, is like when they're like, hey, by the way, it's a Claude 5, Opus 5 specifically. Yeah. I love it when they're like, restart your Claude cowork, right? And now anyway. So you can use the new model. It's like, yay, okay. So they released this on Friday, and I believe it was Saturday. It may have been earlier today, but where the gentleman came out and said, "Yep, I've leaked the system prompt," and it's like fantastic, right? So this thing is supposed to be, hopefully, right, reasonably, resistant to system prompt leakage. I guess there's, if I'm gonna give like anything, any weirdness here, Plinius, Elder Plinius is the persona that did this, and has done it repeatedly for other AI models. So here we have Claude Opus. That's, we can't possibly like unleash Fable or Mythos on the world, right? But here we're dumping system prompts. What's even more concerning here is he said he thinks he's found in doing it. He thinks he's found a universal jailbreak. It's working. It's all models, including Mythos. He claimed, and they are waiting, for a few days, they said, right, for responsible disclosure because they think it's universal. The jailbreak, they believe, is universal. So.
Well, that's just great.
Yeah. Right. So folks, from a security impact standpoint, right, I'm still working with a bunch of folks, particularly in low-code, no-code solutions that are putting API keys and other sensitive information in system prompts. If anything, right, and I'll link to this in the notes here for this one, don't do that. And this, I think, shows why, because despite it being unbreakable, right, here it is, right, and it didn't take long either. We're talking
less than the weekend, right?
Yeah, less than the weekend.
We
didn't even get a full business day out of it.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Which I think also, I mean, that's kind of the story that's going on right now anyway, right? Is the speed at which this stuff is coming at us now. And not to get us like off the AI topic too much, but as a defender, and I think we spoke about this in an earlier show, I feel, so I've always felt a lot of pressure as a defender, right? And just a lot of stress. But it feels ratcheted up more, and everything just feels so consequential, and like there's not enough time, there's not enough of us, we couldn't get everything done before, and now it's just faster and more, and it's really overwhelming, I think.
I don't disagree.
What do we do as defenders to respond to that?
We'll respond to which, right? I mean, because that's really what it comes down. Right. Well, let's go broader, right? Because when we start talking, and this will have to carry over to another show, right, for us to really deep dive. But when we talk AI, I've got just the agentic surface, right? I've got the and the logs that go with that. That's a whole separate discussion, right, for another time too. I've got generative AI solutions, right, which themselves are a trust boundary into any other piece of an application. That has to be threat modeled appropriately, something we already have a hard time with.
Yeah.
You can't say sanitize your data or sanitize your inputs when your inputs are in fact unstructured. It's really easy when you have a phone number, social security number, zip code, ... right, to say here are the rules, the constraints that these things follow.
Right.
And with unstructured data, unstructured text, you have none of that. So how do we do this as defenders? I'm overwhelmed. I can tell you, I'm overwhelmed. And the business wants to move faster than security can. And what I have to continue to tell folks is that's fine. Like, I'm not the guy that's going to tell you no. I
No,
certainly am
absolutely
not.
not. Like,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
here to support and partner with the business, but you are accepting risk.
That's it. That's it. And what I'm having to frame back to leaders, right? So, not just security leaders, but broader technology and business leaders is, when we've had the talk about risk acceptance before, we're having a different talk. We're using the same words, accept the risk. We just, we're just talking about foundationally different things. Because today, I'm dealing with this new attack surface. And I say new, I keep going back to, like, we have decades of experience around, we have decades of experience in labs, not deploying this
Academia
stuff.
and that
Yeah,
kind of thing, not
right.
the world,
Yeah,
right?
not Joe, Joe CTO being like, hey, it'd be really
Yeah.
cool is if I gave Claude Codework access to all my APIs that I can call into with Bloomberg and whatever. And you're even
Yeah.
just setting up going like, hey, bro, like that violates your license, right? Oh,
Mhm.
when, you pull, literally, when you pull data from LexisNexis, go read the fine print, not a lawyer, not legal advice, go look at your, terms of service. But I've done this with a couple of clients now, like that have just hooked up carte blanche everything they have, right? We've got this brand new attack surface that we are as an industry generally unfamiliar with.
Unfamiliar, unprepared, and it's moving so fast
That's
that
it.
even if
Yeah.
you're trying to become familiar, like you're doing what you're supposed to as a professional and a practitioner in our space, right? You're staying up to date. You're trying to learn the thing. You're trying to stay on top of things. It is just moving faster than that is possible.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess I'll close with, just noting, if you're good with closing, we have so much
Sure.
more to talk
We have
about here.
so much more, but yeah.
We will hold some of this for another show. But, one CISO I was working with recently told me, he said, I feel like this is cloud all over again. He said, except with cloud, I had time.
Yes.
He said, I had a 3-year roadmap, a 2-year roadmap. He's like, so
Yes.
in year one, I'm dipping my toes in. We're with some stuff that's not regulated data, that's not, keys to the kingdom, right? He's like, we're doing experiments and we're learning how to secure this stuff. He's like, and as we're learning, the industry is developing best practices. And he's like, and I've got that time. And he's like, here I don't. Here I'm being told, you're in the way, get out of the way, or we'll replace you with somebody who will get out of the way.
Well, because I mean, we have investors and boards. I know of a company that their board literally told their company, their leaders, that if
Mm-hmm.
you do not have some kind of AI integrated into the product that is being used on a daily basis by customers, we're not giving you any more money. We're
Right.
not
Yeah.
investing in you anymore.
Yeah.
And you have 6 months to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
yeah, so absolutely right. And it's funny that you bring up the cloud example, or that they did, because when I do calls with clients, that kind of thing, and I talk about AI risk,
Mm-hmm.
I try and move folks off of, you don't need an entire new risk program specifically around
Thank you.
AI, because it's just a new technology. And I know I just said just, but it's a new technology, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you need to fold it into your existing risk processes, and you need to adjust those risk processes for the nuances of AI. And then I say, like when we had cloud security,
Right.
right? Or when we had the cloud and everybody was moving to the cloud, we didn't stand up a new risk program specifically for cloud. We folded, I mean, they tried to, but we found out that if you just fold it into your existing risk processes, those models still work. That framework still works. You have to do the same thing for AI, and trying to set up a whole new thing is just a distraction and costly, right? Fold it into your existing processes.
Okay. we're going to put a pin on it right there because
Okay.
I want to have a debate about that at some other point, discussion
Okay.
about that. But yeah, whole discussion about that. We could run a whole show based on that. In fact, we probably will this week just to.
Sounds great.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, hey, so folks, it's been fantastic. Jessica, do you want to read us out here?
Yeah, of course.
Let's do it. Okay.
It's been great, Jake. So, everyone, that's the episode. Did we make you smarter? Tell your friend. Did we make you mad? Tell a vendor. Breach Please is a production of and copyright of JWJH Media LLC, all rights reserved. Now, legally, the opinions of our hosts are our own. Though we are an LLC, so honestly, are they? Anyway, the opinions of our guests are theirs alone and represent nobody's employer, client, or official position. None of this is legal, financial, or especially security advice. Do your homework before pointing anything we said at production. Thanks for listening. Patch something, make a threat actor's life suck a little more, follow the 3-2-1 rule, and see you next time on Breach Please.
Peace out.